Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today is super exciting because I am so honored to be a guest designer for the Lawn Fawnatics challenge. If you're not sure what this is, it's a challenge over at the Lawn Fawnatics blog. I think it's lawnfawnatics.com, where every few weeks they host a new card making challenge with some inspiration for a theme for that set of few weeks. This challenge is to create a scene, which was like my perfect challenge. I couldn't have asked for a better challenge because if you've watched many of my YouTube videos before, you know that I love to create scenes. It's one of my favorite things to do in card making. So I was so excited to be part of this challenge and I had so much fun joining in, and I really hope that this project is inspiring to you and inspires you to create a scene of your own. So to start with, I cut out a large rectangle slimline die using the Lawn Fawn large slimline dies. And I'm just blending onto it with some blues for the sky. So I'm using Distress Oxide inks in Peacock Feathers and Tumbled Glass. I started with blending on Peacock Feathers at the top, and then I blended it out with Tumbled Glass, the lighter color, so that it kind of fades into the bottom. I left some white because I know I'm going to put on a grass panel that will be right over top, so you won't even see it. Next, I knew I wanted to put a bit of splatter, so I just kind of smudged out some Peacock Feathers ink, and I diluted it with Lawn Fawn Liquid Stardust, which is a clear, shimmery liquid that has a lot of glitter in it. I just kind of use my paintbrush to transfer that onto an acrylic block, and then I can splatter it out onto my panel. So I'm just taking a little bit more of that ink, adding a little bit more water, and then just doing a lot more splatter. So it kind of gives this really nice background effect to have that peacock feathers splattered in the background. Okay, for the grass piece, I also cut out a panel of Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, which by the way is also the cardstock I used earlier for the rectangle. I find it's a really nice blending cardstock. And I cut it with first the rectangle die and then a grassy border die that is shaped for slimline cards. So that creates that really nice stitched hillside shape, and then I can blend again with my Distress Oxide inks. So for this, I started with pumice stone, which is that gray color at the top, because I kind of wanted it to look like a bit of a pathway. From there, I'm blending on some Twisted Citron, which is this really bright green color, and I'm just going back and forth between the colors to make sure I get a nice blend. At the bottom, I'm blending on some Maude Lawn Distress ink, and this is that really bright, deep green. And again, I'm just blending back and forth to get a good blend here. For some of these colors, I'm using my foam applicator tools, and for the gray, I just used a blending brush. I tend to go back and forth with my blending applicators. Sometimes I use the foam, sometimes I use the brushes. I like using them both. So again, I'm just kind of going back and forth between the colors, making sure I get a really nice blend, especially between that Tumbled Glass and pumice stone, because those two colors are quite different. So I really wanted them to overlap as much as possible and have it not look like such a distinct line between them. And I'm just using a piece of scrap paper to hold onto that panel while I blend so that my fingerprints don't get in the way. Okay, so here I'm doing the same type of splatter effect. I just smudged that Maude Lawn Distress Oxide ink directly onto my acrylic block this time, which I do recommend doing. I learned that that is the better way to do it. Diluted it with some liquid Stardust and then splattered that right onto the panel with a paintbrush. Okay, so now it's time to stamp out a lot of the images I'm going to be using on this card while I wait for my background pieces to dry. Some of the main images I'm using here are from the new Lawn Fawn Tiny Friends stamp set, which they released as part of their Spring 2021 release. And the stamp set comes with a whole assortment of these tiny little people, which are just so cute. The stamp set also has a cat and a dog, but I left them out because I'm making a theme park scene and I didn't think cats and dogs would normally be part of, being a guest at a theme park. So unfortunately I had to leave those two out for today. Also stamping out a bunch of other images that come from a huge variety of Lawn Fawn stamp sets. Another big one is the Coaster Critter stamp set, which has a lot of theme park themed images. So I'm using a lot of those images on my card today. But I also included images from a whole whack of other Lawn Fawn stamp sets. Basically, I went through my stash and just picked out the images that I thought would work well in a theme park scene, and I pulled them out. So for a lot of the stamp sets I used, I just pulled out one or two stamps from that stamp set and stamped it out. For a full list of stamp sets that I use, and actually for a full list of supplies that I'm using on this card, check out my video description below this video. So just scroll down past the video and open up that video description. In that description, I list all of the supplies that I use on this card, including all the names of the stamp set. So if you are curious about where certain images come from, just check out that list and hopefully you'll get your answer. But of course, if you do have any questions about anything in this video, please leave me a comment and I'll try to answer it. Okay, so I stamped out all of these images in Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink because that is a Copic marker friendly ink, or really any alcohol marker friendly. And Copic markers are one of my favorite techniques for coloring. I use them in almost all of my videos. If I decide that I want to go out of my comfort zone, sometimes I add in maybe pencil crayons or watercolors, but as much as I wish I did that more and sort of challenge myself more, I don't. I tend to stick to what I know, and I love to use Copic markers. So I do use those in a lot of my videos. For today's video, I'm just going to show the coloring of these tiny friends, because that is one of Lawn Fawn's newest stamps that they've released, so it's something that I've never colored in a video before. And if you do want to see more of my coloring, check out any of my other videos. Honestly, I color in almost all of them. Plus, there was a lot of images to color for today's card, so if I had included all of them, this video would have been probably triple as long as it is already. So yeah, I'm just going to focus on these tiny friends. So as you can see, I went ahead and colored in all of their skin tones first, and I just chose, I think, 3 or 4 different combinations of skin tone colors and just colored in a few of the little people in with each one, just to kind of make it a little bit easier on myself, so I didn't have to come up with a new combination for every little person. So I kind of grouped them. So I did a few with like a darker combination, a few with a lighter, some in the middle. And then I went through and colored in all of their hair. And I did the same thing with this too. So I picked, again, a few different combinations of hair colors, some more red, some more blonde, some black, some brown, and just kind of picked out a few of the different people to color in for each of the combinations. So this is a good tip that I have to give for coloring if you have lots of different little images like this, because I know, at least from my experience, it can get a little overwhelming if you have like 20 different little images all with different components that need to be colored, to kind of try and figure out which combination of markers you should use for every little component of all the images. So I do think that's a good tip in those cases, is to really just pick a few combinations and just kind of color your images in groups. So you do have some that are the same as others, but there is variety overall. So now I've moved on to the clothes, and I'm doing the same thing here. So again, I'm kind of just picking out different combinations. So I picked out a couple blue shades, a couple purple shades, a couple tan shades, and I'm just kind of going through the little people and picking out different things that I want to color in with those colors. So for example, I colored in one of their skirts red, and one of their shirts red, one of their shoes red, and kind of just going through color by color and picking out little elements until all of them are filled and colored in. So this again just kind of helps keep things simple, so I don't have to worry about changing my markers for every single little element, and I can kind of get multiple elements colored with those same colors at once. My technique in general for coloring, especially for coloring really tiny images like this, is to just pick 2 colors to blend. So I find it with 1 color it's a little bit too flat, but with 3 colors there's such a tiny space and it's hard to blend 3 colors properly in such a tiny space. So I usually stick with 2 colors, and I start by adding the darkest one, and then I blend it out with light. So I put the darkest color in places where I think there's going to be the most shadow, and then I blend it out with the light color. And this gives a fairly good two-toned effect. Now the exception is these tiny little shoes on all of these people, which I'm just using 1 shade, 1 marker to color them in, because you wouldn't even see 2 tones in those shoes, they're so tiny. So for things like that, of course, it's totally fine, but for anything a bit bigger, it's nice to at least have 2 shades. Okay, so once all these little people are colored in, I'm just taking a white Jelly Roll pen and going through and adding a little bit of accent to each of the little characters. Just adding a little tiny white line or dot into some of the areas along the edges of the coloring, and I find this just gives a really cute little accent to these colored images. And off camera, I did go ahead and color in all the rest of the images and cut them out, so now I can continue with the rest of the card. So I used Finley's ABC's dies to cut out the word magic out of Lawn Fawn's Ballet Slippers cardstock, which is this really pretty light pink color. And I'm just coating every single letter with some Wink of Stella glitter brush pen, and this will give them a really fun sparkly shine. Then what I'm doing is I'm taking Lawn Fawn chunky glitter and adding a little bit of the chunky glitter to the bottoms of each of the letters. And this creates sort of an ombre glitter effect with the chunkiest glitter down at the bottom and lighter, more flat glitter up towards the top. So for each layer, I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue to the bottom half using my thin nozzle of liquid glue here, and just sticking that letter down into the pile of chunky glitter and then putting it off to the side. So every single letter is the same, where again, I'm just adding a little bit of liquid glue, dabbing it into that chunky glitter, and then putting it off to the side. And I'm using my tweezers to hold those letters as I dab them in, and it just kind of gets my fingers out of the way. By the way, you'll have noticed by now my cat likes to visit me in a lot of my videos, so you'll see her sort of walking back and forth on screen. Her name is Luna, and she loves to craft with me. Okay, so now to finish off the sentiment, in addition to the word magic, I'm stamping out "You Can Never Have Enough." And this sentiment comes from the Lawn Fawn Unicorn Picnic stamp set. So I cut out a banner shape out of some white cardstock, and I'm just stamping out that sentiment in light pink ink to match the word magic. And I just stamped it out a few times to get it to be a little bit darker so that you could see it. Okay, so now to assemble the card. I cut out a slimline card base, which is 8.5 by 3.5 inches, and I just used some liquid glue to glue down that sky panel right onto the card base. For the rest of the images, you'll see me sort of glue a bunch of the bits and pieces together as I go, and I'm just using some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium Glue, which is a really nice glue for this because it dries completely matte and you don't see it if a little bit squishes out of the sides. So I use that glue to stick little pieces together. Now for this roller coaster piece, I stuck a few of the roller coaster bits together along with the flag and the roller coaster cars, and then I'm just sticking it right down onto that card panel so that it will be behind the grass. Kind of just measured out where I wanted it to be and marked it down by pencil before I stuck it down. And then I can stick down that grass piece as well using some liquid glue right on top. So now the whole base is sort of ready to go, and I can just work on getting my images in. So again, I'm just kind of going through my images and sticking little bits and pieces together with some liquid glue. I'm using my craft tweezers to hold them in place so that I can see everything without my fingers getting in the way. So I stuck a little person into the ticket booth, and then I stuck, I think what is meant to be cotton candy into the food booth, but I colored it sort of a yellowy color to look more like popcorn. And then I stuck a little ticket into one of the person's hands, and now I'm sticking these two princesses into the castle. If you haven't noticed by now, or if you're not a Disney fan, you might not have noticed that there is a light Disney theme going on with this card. There's some Disney themed elements as part of this theme park. It's not overtly themed, like I didn't overdo the Disney theming, but there's little bits and pieces there if you look hard enough. So, for example, the castle is colored in with the same color scheme as Cinderella's castle at Disney World. The two princesses that I put in the turrets there are colored in to look like Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella because the castle at Disney World in Florida is Cinderella's castle, whereas the castle in Disneyland in California is Sleeping Beauty's castle. So I wanted to give a little nod to those two princesses. The popcorn that I put in the food stand is because popcorn at Disney World is one of my favorite treats to get while I'm there. I know there's so many more interesting and kind of more exotic treats you can get there, but I just love the popcorn. It's so good. I also colored in the little fairy to look like Tinkerbell. She's off to the left on the panel there, but I'm going to be gluing her down more to the right when I'm done. And with the little people that are blowing bubbles, I put 3 of the bubbles there to be sort of like a little hidden Mickey. They're just beside the word magic to the left of the M there. You can see them, the little hidden Mickey. Lastly, I just thought the sentiment was a little bit Disney themed as well. You can never have enough magic because, of course, Disney World is the most magical place on earth. So I just thought that was a very fitting sentiment for this card. So yeah, there's some elements that are loosely Disney themed. It's not too overt, but they're in there. So you'll notice them if you're a Disney fan, which I am, of course. Okay, so now I'm just kind of going through one by one and sticking all of these elements down. For a bunch of them, I used foam squares, especially the ones that I sort of wanted to stick out from the card. So all the little people are on foam, the castle's on foam, the food stands are on foam, and then for some of the elements that I wanted to sort of fade more into the background, I just stuck them straight down with liquid glue. So I stuck down the clouds, I glued down the flowers along the bottom and things like that. As a finishing touch, I'm going through a lot of these images and adding some Wink of Stella glitter pen, and that again just gives that nice clear shimmer and glitter, which it's a little bit hard to see in the video and even in the photos, but when you take the card in real life and turn it in the light as I'm doing now, it really does shine and it's really beautiful. So that is the finished card for today. I hope that you enjoyed watching me make this slimline scene. Again, it was such an honor to join in on the Lawn Fawnatics challenge as a guest designer, literally my dream come true. Of course I had to make a card about the place where dreams come true. So thank you Lawn Fawnatics for having me. It's been a true pleasure. I hope that you all enjoyed watching this video. If you want to see more of my cards, make sure to head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!